Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Unity North. I'm Reverend Richard Burdick. I want to say welcome to those of you who are in the room, those of you who are joining us on Zoom, on Facebook, on YouTube. We're coming from all kinds of directions and all kinds of places, yet we are coming together in an outward demonstration that time and space absolutely does not limit us. What a wonderful segue that would be to our discussion and our dialogue this evening. I'm Reverend Richard Burdick, and I welcome you to our Wednesday night experience. Every Wednesday night, it's a little bit different here at Unity North, and tonight is no exception to the rule. I've been looking forward to this evening for quite a long time. For about a week and a half, Unity North has had the rare opportunity to have free access to a link to a movie that has yet to make its way to mainstream media and to public television. It's called Living with Ghosts. How many in the room have seen that? Yeah, I hope, and that's why you were here. Those of you online, I hope that you have also seen the movie and had a chance to look at this really thought-invoking piece of art. And it's a blessed night because we have two very special people that are joining us tonight via Zoom. We're dealing with the technology. We got a few technological difficulties going on, but we're going to go with the flow. But we got people coming from New York that are zooming in tonight, and we want to hear what they have to say. So I want to give thanks to the team, the tech team that's working on making it all possible that we can talk. You can go ahead and applaud for them. That's all right. So we've had the opportunity to watch this movie for about a week and a half, dealing with the subject of grief and of loss and of afterlife communication, a very serious subject to us here at Unity North, because it absolutely proves that theory that we hold, that God and the oneness that we know is not limited by time and by space. I was shocked in the movie that we had several clergy being represented kind of as the naysayers, but I was so delighted that Stephen took the opportunity to make sure all voices got to be heard in the movie, all perspectives. That is one of the things that makes this movie so very rich, is that all voices were heard. We're going to have a Q&A tonight, so I hope you have brought some questions into the room. Those of you in the room, just some logistics. If you have a question or a statement you'd like to make in your conversation with Stephen and Joni, I want to know that you have that question if you come up and you stand right over here. When I see you standing there, then I can move into inviting you to the microphone, and I'll bring the microphone to you so you can ask your question. They're going to be on the big screen here. Well, I guess he's up there already. So, but let me introduce, first of all, the person who brought this movie to us. Her name is Joni Gomo, and Joni has attended services here at Unity North. And when she saw the movie and was a part of the production of this movie and bringing it to the forefront, she says, I think Unity North really could benefit from this. And so she brought it to my attention. We had a wonderful conversation, and I want to just thank her for making that happen. Is Joni on there? Yes, there she is. That's Joni, and she's the one that made this possible here tonight, so I give her all kinds of gratitude. But I want you to know that she's just not a producer here. She's just not a congregant here. She has years and years and years of hospice experience. She's a hospice nurse. So this topic is very near and dear to her heart, and the theories that are being espoused here, she's lived them as she's helped people walk through the veil and helped families deal with that veil and that sense of loss. And so will you please welcome Joni Gomo, first and foremost. Joni, do you want to say hi to make sure we can hear you?
Didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted you to say hi to the folks, and they saying hi to you.
Hi.
We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate you being the bridge that brought this movie and Stephen to Unity North. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Stephen Berkley. Stephen Berkley is an award-winning director, writer, producer, and filmmaker. He is the brains, he is the engine, he is the sweat, he is the everything behind this movie getting to the forefront. Besides all of that, you know, in my conversations with Stephen, he is a gentle soul. He is a gentle man, he is a kind heart. And I believe that those of you who have watched the movie know that it's not just evident in my interactions with Stephen and our interactions tonight, but I think you can see the kind heart and the fair hand in this movie. There was a heart behind it. It wasn't just a documentary. It was something that spoke to a deeper place, the spirit and the heart. And I really honored that in Stephen, and I really appreciate his patience with us figuring out how to do this. This is a new experience for us. And so I just want to get him as much time as we can tonight to answer your questions and to answer anything that's in your heart with him. But will you just make a little bit of noise in the room to welcome the director, the producer, the filmmaker, Stephen Berkeley. Can we get Stephen up there? Can we get Stephen's face up there? Stephen, do you want to say anything to us? We need you guys to do that. You guys have to get Stephen's face up there. He needs to speak. He needs to speak? Okay, Stephen, just say hi to the folks.
I'm here. Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to watching the film. Thank you for attending this Q&A. I was very happy to answer any questions you might have tonight. I'm excited to be here. I wish I could be in the room and see everybody. How many people are here tonight?
I can try to do that.
Anything is possible. Anything and everything is possible. As far as questions go, I want to let you guys know we have several on Facebook and YouTube that are here. You'll be able to ask questions via the chat. And so if you have something you'd like to put into the room and have your question answered by Stephen, we have a screen in the back of the room where your question will be put up, and I will speak for you. Here in the room, once again, if you have something to say, you just come up here and I'll know that I get the microphone to you. I do want to get the ball rolling. And I told Stephen we'd throw a couple of softball questions at him to get it going before we got too deep. But, Stephen, what inspired you to make this film? After-death communication, what in the world made you say, I want to make a movie about this? What was the catalyst?
I'm so glad you asked me that, Richard. Here's what happened. First of all, am I echoing a lot on your end? You could hear me okay?
It's good.
Okay, good. So, my father died. That's how it happened. That's how it started. My mother did not do well with her grief. She had a very difficult time. And my brother and I flew down to Florida to assist her in any way we could. We got her involved with a grief counselor, with a support group, had her attend the religious services, but nothing was really helping her. And there was a moment where a couple of weeks after my father's passing, she started to lighten a little bit. And I asked her what was happening. She said, Stevie, I think your father's still here. And I didn't know what to make of that at first, but I was happy that my mother was just feeling better. And I went with that. Okay, Mom, I don't know why you're feeling better, but great. Well, unfortunately, a few weeks later, my mother made the mistake of sharing what she felt was my father in the house. She shared that with her grief counselor. And her grief counselor said, well, Irene, that's denial. That's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And that made me very unhappy because my mother was actually starting to get better. She was starting to feel better. She was starting to reintegrate into her social circles. She was living again. And this was only a few weeks after my father's passing. And yet, she was starting to kind of reverse course when she realized that maybe what she was doing wasn't healthy. It didn't take me very long, very little amount of research to find out that that's not really state-of-the-art psychology. That state-of-the-art psychology says, you know what, these kind of visits that my mother was experiencing is very common, and it usually helps the bereaved. It doesn't hurt them. And yet, even though this is very clear in the medical literature, that psychologists and grief and health service providers should not discourage people from exploring this phenomena. It happens routinely that it is discouraged. So that kind of lit a fire under me. It was a sense of injustice, I guess, that the film was born.
I appreciated so much that you brought some of those counter voices into the room for the movie. And we'll go a little bit deeper here, but people representing religion said, don't go there, don't do this is wrong, this is not a good thing to do. And some of the psychologists and psychiatrists that you put into the movie were also pushing back on that. In fact, we, putting the movie out, had somebody say, well, you go ahead and do it. If you want to talk to demons, go ahead and talk to demons. And so with a right-wing Christian movement, it was kind of getting on our case a little bit. How have you dealt with the resistance, or has there been resistance or backlash from opening up the dialogue to a greater audience that this is healthy, this is important, it's real, and it's necessary?
I'm sorry, you asked me what the backlash has been?
Yes.
Well, fortunately, there has not been backlash. At least I haven't had to field a lot of backlash directly, with the exception of the title. People generally appreciate that the movie seems balanced, that it doesn't seem to preach one way or the other. It's just presenting information, it's presenting different people's opinions. And I think, someone who's fairly astute can ascertain where my leanings are to some degree, but at least ostensibly I tried to make the film be kind of somewhere objective. That was my hope, at least.
I think you achieved your goal, and I don't know about the people in the room and those who have watched it in the congregation, it felt very, very fair, and it felt like it was a 360-degree view, and that you welcomed in some of those counter opinions. You mentioned the title, that maybe you've gotten some backlash about the title. In my conversations with the people, and I'm slowing down purposely so the echo is a little easier to manage, but living with ghosts, I heard from many congregants that they felt the title did not give a clear picture of what the movie was about. And I'd just be curious, where did the title come from, and why did you choose that particular title?
Well, first off, I completely empathize with those congregants that felt that the title didn't feel completely like it was embracing the story, because I feel that way. I struggled with different titles, and for me, this is a love story. It's not about ghosts, it's about love. And if you want to know why I chose this particular title, well, I have a couple of different reasons. I'll tell you each of them. First, the word ghosts has multiple connotations, right? There's a figurative connotation and a literal connotation. Some of the widows in the story really feel like their husband is in the house with them, and that's a literal connotation. Whereas the protagonist in the film, Karen, it's really the memory of her husband that's in the house. She's living with the absence of her husband, and the absence of her husband is what's haunting her. So the word applies to everyone in the story. And I like that. I like that it applies to everyone. I also like that it basically is what it is. There was a movie I saw several years ago, it might be 10 years old, it was called Snakes on a Plane with Samuel L. Jackson. It was a B movie, it was a silly movie, but I love the title because it basically was what it was. It was snakes on a plane, and it kind of grabbed me. And I feel I purposely wanted a mainstream title. I didn't want to preach to the choir. I wanted a title that would be appealing to anybody, believers and skeptics, both. And I thought this was kind of a mainstream title. Ghost is a mainstream word. Now, I got a cute, quick story. I'm wondering if people in the audience know who Bill Guggenheim is. I'll just share it just for those who don't. Most people don't. Like, Bill Guggenheim wrote a book called Hello from Heaven, and he coined the term after-death communication because he interviewed like 20,000 people, and he collected all these anecdotes from people who were experiencing what they thought were signs from their deceased loved one. And it's still considered the seminal work in after-death communication. It's also considered something that is frequently recommended as a resource for people who are more interested in after-death communication and wondering what's behind it. And I wanted to get the film in front of Bill Guggenheim because I wanted his endorsement. I also wanted his approval, much like a little boy wants his daddy's approval. Bill Guggenheim is an iconic figure when it comes to this subject. So I wanted him to watch the film. I wanted him to give me a pat on the head, attaboy, Steve. And I wanted him to perhaps help me get the message out further because he's got a big name And he's actually a Guggenheim from the Guggenheim family. So I really wanted his help. He read my email and he responded with what I would call a dressing down. He did not like the word ghosts, and he told me in no uncertain terms that it's considered pejorative, that it makes people think of spookiness and Halloween and haunted houses, and it really gave the wrong message. And he decided that he was going to boycott my film. He was not going to watch it. And I was like, I didn't know what to say except, Bill, you're judging a book by its cover. Watch the movie. I mean, I'm trying to appeal. I have a certain target audience I'm trying to appeal to. It's a mainstream title. That's all purposeful to get butts in the seats. Watch the film. Give me your opinion. He wouldn't do it. The happy ending to that story is when the film premiered at an association called the International Association for Near-Death Studies. That's where the film premiered. It's an academic. It's run by a professor, so it's a serious organization, and it's fairly well known in the world for people who've had near-death experiences and want to kind of hook up with other people who've also experienced the phenomena they experienced. I had the premiere there. Bill Guggenheim, I could see who was logging in to see the film during the premiere. I saw Bill Guggenheim's name, so even though he refused to watch the film in that moment, he did ultimately see the film. I don't know if he saw the title and then realized what he was watching and walked out, but he did see the film, I think. But I did get that kind of backlash, and if anybody, given that explanation of what I was trying to do regarding the title, I would love to hear if anybody else has something they would have preferred.
Yeah, I don't know if I've heard any alternatives. It opened up great dialogue, actually. The word ghosts opened up an opportunity to discuss, and some people who were reluctant, I don't think it's for me. I talked them into watching it, and they said, well, I'm really glad that I did. I don't know if I have any alternative titles or any questions about that title, but I'm going to keep asking questions until I see something on the chat or one of you in the room is here. This took you 7 years, right? This is a 7-year project and a 7-year study that you were working with. That takes a lot from somebody to keep pushing forward. You know, the number 7 in metaphysical worlds it means as long as it takes to get the job done. I'd be curious as what did you have to call upon in yourself to persevere when there were obviously blocks to get 7 years, that there were some blocks, and what were the surprises that you found not only in the process but in yourself as you danced for 7 years with this movie?
Well, Richard, that is a great question. Thank you. That's a deep one. It's got a lot of layers. What made me persevere, to answer your first question first, is that I felt that I felt that the film was actually bigger than me. I don't have much of an ego. I felt that the story was important. I was very, very upset with the treatment of my mother in her grief. She had very few choices, and she was discouraged from the one choice that was helping her, that actually was a healthy choice. And so being able to support people or putting something out into the world that could validate what these people, it wasn't just my mother's friends, were also having experiences in their golden years that made them feel comforted, that they were close to the end and their husbands were going to welcome them. And that was very nice for them. And I wanted to put something out into the world that would support them. So that's what gave me the gumption to continue, even though it was ridiculously expensive expensive to make this film, and it was taking a lot of time away from my family, but that's what helped me persevere through it. In terms of surprises, I think what I was surprised about was, and this is going to get a little woo, so forgive me, because again, I'm trying to be objective about everything, but I thought this was pretty interesting. I was interviewing a lot of mediums initially because I thought mediums were going to be important characters in the film. I actually didn't end up using any mediums, but I was interviewing them initially, and each medium that I consulted with said to me, you know, there are a lot of people on the other side of the veil that are very eager to see you finish this thing. So if it feels like you're getting help, that's them. You actually are getting that help. So just go with it. And lo and behold, I could point to several instances while in the making of this film where there could have been, things could have gone terribly, either because of the weather or because a subject just kind of backed out or they didn't want to speak or something, but things happened serendipitously, which made me feel like I was getting help. Of course, I have no scientific validation for that, but it felt really good to think that maybe I really was getting that help.
You know, you said this might be a little woo-woo. Well, you're in the right arena. We do woo-woo around here. We enjoy woo-woo because we know that there's far more to this earthly experience than what we have believed. I do want to clarify one comment before I pursue something else you said. Somebody on the chat said that Richard seems from his comments to be equating ghosts to demons. That was an accusation that came to us from the outside. I want to clarify that. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe in demons. I believe in spiritual energy. And so there was not a comparison. That was just somebody accused us who was a little counter to us having this dialogue today. Stephen, one of the words that you have spoken a number of times, and you've said it probably 8, 9 times, is the word comfort. And the movie, I found myself, and I don't know, I'm seeing head shaking, it was very comforting. We got to walk through this family, and I not just the mother, Karen, I believe was the name, but the mother-in-law and the 2 daughters. There was a great deal of comfort and care that pulled at my heartstrings watching this movie. So it was not just a documentary. I felt emotionally invested with this family, and I just applaud you for that. What comfort would you like to see this movie bring once it makes it to public television, beyond whether it's true or not, or this person's authentic or not? What is the comfort that you see this movie bringing to the planet?
Well, the movie is really based on a research report called Continuing Bonds. I mentioned it very briefly in the film, but whether it's this particular modality that's featured in the film, the induced after-death communication, whether it's automatic writing, or whether it's something else, the idea that we continue in some form and honoring that in some way it has been shown to really help people on a cellular level. This Continuing Bonds report, which came out in like 1995 by a professor named Dennis Klass, basically showed that what Freud had said something along the lines of, well, maybe we should just move on, just kind of cut ties and move on, and that's the way to deal with grief. That's not actually what he said, but that's how people interpreted what he said. And it turns out this 1995 report said, no, our nervous systems actually do a lot better when we feel like we're still connected. And whether we're just looking through a photo album and saying, oh, okay, that's my dad, I miss him, I love you, Dad, whether you're just doing that, or whether you're doing automatic writing, something as dramatic as that, just having the notion that our bonds do continue is much healthier solution. So my hope and my goal is when people see this film is not that I'm trying to purport any particular therapy, or not to say there's one particular way to get through grief, but it's just to say, hey, this continuing bonds idea, it's a good one. It really helps people, and it will ease suffering. That's the goal, to ease suffering.
Well, that's a very worthy cause, and I do believe in my dialogues with the people who have watched the movie that the movie has already done that. It is achieving its goal because it gave a sense of hope to some people who, in particular, had lost loved ones very recently. And some of those people were the most afraid that it was going to be too emotional, but I think they found a sense of peace. I would be curious for you or Joni to talk about, have you experienced the actual technique that they were using in Dallas, and what that experience was like for you directly, having a communication either with your father or with somebody else who was passed? Did you go through the techniques, or were you an observer behind the camera, and how that experience was for either one of you?
Is that question directed at me or Joni?
Either one of you.
Okay, I didn't go through the therapy myself. Joni, have you gone through anything like that?
I have not gone through the therapy myself. I have had my own spontaneous ABCs though myself, but I have not gone through that therapy.
Well, I love the idea that Stephen shared about there are energies that were behind this movie coming to be. And here at Unity North, we all have those conversations. We feel the ancestors, as we call them, the angels, doesn't matter what you call them, guiding us and urging us forward. And I think that is so vitally important, because we have drawn comfort from that as well. And I think that many people who have seen the movie would like to have a closer experience of this. Where would we go if somebody in the congregation wanted to have this direct experience? Who would they contact?
There's a resources tab. Like if you go to the website livingwithghostsmovie.com, there's a tab where you can look at the resources that were consulted for the film. So there's a directory there that has all the therapists that will have this therapy as part of their repertoire. They're broken down by state. So you will be able to find, most likely you'll be able to find a therapist in your area. Actually, it doesn't have to be in your area because they do teletherapy, but it has to be in your state because everybody's got to be licensed to be able to practice in your state. So you find somebody in Georgia who is doing IADC therapy that way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I knew if I talked long enough, I could get somebody in the audience to want to ask a question. So Jackie's here, and because of our technical difficulties, I'm going to bring the microphone to her. We're going to have to talk clearly and slowly because they have a big echo on the mic.
I'm a therapist, and I do a lot of grief work and trauma work. I was very intrigued by the techniques. I'm not sure you can answer my questions. I know they did EMDR, and then they did the bilateral stimulation with the tapping on the hands. In doing trauma work, when you de-traumatize something like Karen, people become at ease. But the implication in the movie was that then she went on to maybe do automatic writing. If somebody was doing this technique in hopes of getting the person that was deceased to present themselves more readily to them, how do they manage that? Because again, a lot of grief and that's connected to trauma would just ease it, and then people would naturally move on and they wouldn't have those other connections. That part is very interesting to me.
So I did hear most of that. I think I may have missed the question. What was the question? Can you just repeat that part of it?
Do you know how often people would go through that program and get to have encounters with their deceased loved one rather than they just become at ease and they move on?
So are you asking what percentage of people are actually having an after-death communication?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
It's between 70 and 80%.
Really? Oh, gosh.
It's very, very high.
It is very high, and I really want to know more about that because, like I said, I've had people share experiences that they've had when someone died and they had a visitation and all that, but to de-traumatize them, and then they are able to continue the connection is fascinating.
It is. Now, most people, I should tell you that I do know quite a bit about this because I've been sitting on panels with the therapists who are answering these questions, so I could tell you what they would say. And I've had a lot of time with Graham Maxey, who was the Karen's therapist in the film. We spent, years together talking about this, so I could speak somewhat authoritatively about this procedure. Most people are fine just feeling like their loved one is near them. They don't feel a great need to have an ongoing relationship. That's most people. There are some people, a minority, that do want that continued feeling that they're connecting with their spouse continually, and that's great for them. But by and large, most people are just happy knowing that they will see their loved one again, or at least that's what they're believing, which is fine, because the therapy works for both skeptics and believers. It's not unique to believers. As a matter of fact, and this is going to blow your mind, the therapy works better for skeptics. Now ask me why.
Why?
Because skeptics have no preconceived notions. They have no expectations, usually. They don't think the procedure is going to work. Whereas believers sometimes get very excited and very eager to make a connection, and that can block results for whatever reason. The state of mind that is facilitated with this procedure, it's very delicate. And the whole removal of the trauma, I still don't understand this part, even though the therapist explained it to me a number of times. The bilateral stimulation helps you assimilate the trauma in a way where it becomes part of me. The trauma moves from one part of my brain where it's trapped in the emotional centers, and it moves to the reading part of my brain, let's say, the thinking part. And that movement, moving the trauma from one place in the brain to the other part of the brain by doing this bilateral stimulation, helps me assimilate the trauma and relieve me of something that could have been burdening me for decades. And that seems to, for whatever reason, open someone up, or maybe someone very, very, I guess, susceptible. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but...
Receptive?
Okay. But their antenna during that moment is very high when suddenly the trauma is gone.
Right.
And in that moment, that's when this phenomena typically occurs. Now, again, I'm not professing that this phenomena means that your loved one is existing somewhere in another realm. But that's what happens. People, one after the other, are coming in through these therapists' offices, sometimes completely despondent. They're having this procedure in 2 90-minute sessions, and they leave the office skipping. At least on one occasion, I was told that a client, and during one of these sessions, literally skipped out of the office. They were so excited to feel like they made that connection.
That makes sense to me as a therapist. The part that I'm intrigued about is the ongoing connection, and how often that ongoing connection maybe either pops up. One lady said her husband showed up in the garage door.
Right.
Or if somebody's looking for more of that other person after you de-traumatize them. That's...
What Graham gets that question a lot. Okay. And Graham says, once you know the way there, it's really easy to get back there. It's almost like you've been given a map. And the people who want that ongoing connection can actually do something themselves. They do this. They could do tapping themselves, and they could achieve that state of mind that they were in the therapist's office. And I know Graham himself, this is something I kind of asked him not to talk about too much in public, because it puts him in the category of very far left, and I'm trying to keep him somewhere in the middle, at least ostensibly. But Graham speaks to his deceased daughter routinely or I shouldn't say speaks, I should say he reunites with his deceased daughter routinely by doing this and going through whatever the steps are in order to achieve that state of mind.
I want to comment. I'd like to comment because you brought up the woman and seeing her husband at the garage door. That was probably the most meaningful scene in the movie in my household, and it validated a unity idea. The woman said, I had the experience, and then I was fine. I don't want to have it again, because I began to experience my husband in, through, and around as everything, which is what unity's all about, that we're all energy. Her husband had been folded into her entire life experience, and that was enough for her. That felt extremely comforting and kind of what my heart would like to experience when it comes to those who have transcended. The process was almost like when you're in a spin on an ice. It's counterintuitive to turn into the trauma. Rather than push it away or to fight the trauma, the movie, you go right directly in. The process takes them right into the trauma, and we teach in Unity that what we resist persists. What we are resisting is persisting, so let's go head on into that. And I thought that was also right in alignment with what Unity teaches. We did have another question, Marilyn. You have to come up. Well, hold it close.
Not as much a question as I wanted to share an experience. When my first husband died, I went into a deep depression because of his death, and stayed in therapy for several years and went on antidepressants and stayed in therapy and started having migraine headaches. And the only thing that started to help me was that I started to talk to one of my nieces and discovered that she was a medium, and I had no idea that she had this gift. But she helped me communicate with Tam. I'm trying not to cry. Even though it's been quite a few years since his death, it's still very raw at times to talk about him. But through her helping me to communicate with him, she really helped me get over his passing. And what was so difficult about it was that Tam was disabled, and I divorced him, and I always felt really guilty about divorcing him because of his disability. And through her, one of the communications with him after his death was that he said through the medium was that we had finished everything that we needed to do, and that everything was okay, that when I left, I was supposed to leave. Anyway, it made me feel okay that that my leaving was okay, you know. Anyway, so I just became very close to this niece after that, and I wrote a book about my husband, this husband after his death, and I found all these writings after his death, all this poetry and free verse writing that he had written that I never knew I lived with this man for 20 years.
Keep us on the film.
Right.
But we can save that for next Wednesday.
Okay, but anyway, I always believed in afterlife, but that really confirmed it.
I liked the sense of okayness. You said there was an okayness, not only with you, but with others who had transcended. And I think there was an okayness in the movie. And I think as any good documentary film does, it left me wanting more. I felt like there was this great build-up to the okayness of Karen, and then we dropped. I wanted more. So can you talk a little bit about where that family is, what they're experiencing now, what the benefits were having gone through this process?
Sure. Thank you for summing that up. I wanted more too. And I did go to Karen's house repeatedly after the end of production and asked her if she would do some kind of an interview, because I got these kinds of requests. They want to know exactly what's happening. But Karen, as you might be able to ascertain from the film itself, is a very private person. She was a reluctant protagonist. She did not want to do the film. And after 7 years with me, when we wrapped, she was done. Now, I can tell you that she's happy in her life. She's not remarried. That was never a goal of hers, was to get remarried or to find someone new to love. She's very happy and very strong, independent woman. And she's very content where she is, but she's not willing to speak at any of my Q&As like this one. She really values her privacy at this point. I would have loved to have had more of a denouement in the film, so you get a little bit more of after the climax, where you felt like you had a little bit more time to let the climax kind of soak in and to feel like, she's going to be okay. But I didn't have that option. But I'm hoping that what's there now, with her on her deck, thinking about her husband, writing to him, I'm hoping that's going to have to be enough for you, Richard.
Well, you did an excellent job of enough for me. It was just a blip at the end of the movie where there was a healing between Karen and her mother-in-law. There's an obvious divide that starts at the beginning of that movie, and the embrace and the tears brought me comfort that this work is not just about connecting and uniting with people that have ascended, but it is connecting with the people right here, and that the work itself and the movie may make us lay down things that have divided us and bring families and people together, even in our differences. And I really appreciate that that's in there. I wanted more of that, but that's the work that I do. Can you speak a little bit about the benefit of the movie doing that?
I'm sorry, I just missed the last few words. We'll say that one more time.
It will just speak about the benefit of the movie beyond connecting with people, otherworldly people, the healing that can happen just amongst those of us on earth, families brought back together, reunited as a result of the movie. Right.
I caught most of what you said. I think I'm going to answer this as best I can, given what I was able to hear. Yes, I think that as you could see in the beginning of the film, the family was pretty much, the Beersworth family was pretty much dysfunctional. That, at least as far as the grandmother was concerned, the grandmother was a very active part. Ethel had a very active part in the lives of Karen and her children and Kevin. And then after she introduced automatic writing to the granddaughters, everything really fell apart. And it was many years, as you could see in the film, there was many years in between that time when the family fell apart and the time they reunited at that restaurant. And that was because I think they were just in a better mental spot and they can come together. And part of that was due to Karen's ability to kind of open herself up to a healing modality that really worked for her.
Well, I thought it was beautifully done, and we have another question, so I'm going to save my next comment for this one.
I had a kind of experience watching the film, and I felt like my father communicated in a very interesting way, and I'm wondering if other people have reported similar incidents after watching the film. After my father died in 2020, I went to a medium, and she said, "I'm seeing your dad, and he's handing me a croquet mallet." And that meant absolutely nothing. Nobody played croquet in my family. And she brought it up again and again. She said, he's still showing me this croquet mallet. And then when I saw that scene when the two sisters were playing croquet and talking about their dad, and I felt like it finally made sense, like he was reaching out. And I'm wondering if other people have just seen these random things in the movie that were just there, that you didn't plan, and their loved ones were able to reach through and communicate as a result of that.
If I'm hearing you correctly, are you saying that the croquet scene that you saw felt to you like an after-death communication?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's very cool. I haven't heard a lot of feedback. There's not that many people who've seen the film, so maybe I will get that kind of feedback, in the months to come. But that's very gratifying to hear, and it wouldn't surprise me at all, because as you know, spirit moves in very cool and curious ways, and I believe that could have been an after-death communication for you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask a question? Shirley?
Thank you. I don't have a, okay. I don't have a question. I just have a statement to make, but I did watch the movie, and it brought a lot of distress for me because
You're going to have to talk really loud.
Oh, because I've watched the movie and I got something from it, quite a bit of stuff. But my energy is that I have had numerous spiritual experiences with people coming to me, and people I didn't even know would confess things to me and make statements to me to tell people things. So my problem is I saw that in certain instances at the end of it, when you mention all the philosophers, psychologists, and people who study this, well, I'm not gifted in that, but I definitely am gifted with people coming to me. So my question is also, how do you get a degree in that? Because I start thinking about charlatans. All the people that have appeared to me came in a different way, made a different statement. I address certain things in a different way. So how is there anyone or any way that you can say to a person, it's just like when you go on the boardwalk and you go to a spiritual medium or reader and they all say, oh, I see in the cards you're gonna have meet a young man and he's gonna be tall and thin and whatever, give you the basic of what anybody could be like. Well, that's charlatanism to me, and that's where I find a problem with the media. It is definitely natural for me. I've had so many spirits to come to me. I've even studied some things about it. But now when you say there are people that you can go to that has a license, I got my energy from God. I got all the stuff I needed from him, the people that appeared to me. And I thought about that movie. When he mentioned, first of all, I did not think the movie was going to be about ghosts with grief. Immediately, I was like everybody else when I saw that, because I had a different interpretation of what grief is like. You have different stages of grief. But when he applied it to grief, and then he's now saying it's about love, well, the spirits that come to me, some were not good spirits, and some were good spirits. And then some spirits didn't want anything from me but to let me know that they didn't commit suicide, they were pushed. Or tell them that, yes, there is a hell, and the way they live this life will determine where they go when they die.
So, Shirley, can I work with something you said there? You introduced something into this, and I want to see if Joni would also like to answer this question. But she said that spirits are from God, that the experiences that she has had came from God. I'd be curious, the two of you, both Stephen and Joni, your relationship with God, or a lack of relationship with God, and how this process of making this film maybe shifted your perspective and your relationship. So I'd like to hear from both of you.
I'm going to let Aunt Joni answer that first.
So, Joni, there you are.
I actually I was born and raised Southern Baptist and dabbled. It never really seemed to fit right for me, especially when I had my first ADC. I was 14 years old. And after that, it was kind of a pivotal moment for me. And I realized I didn't really fit into the box of a particular organized religion anymore. And I also felt that, God was so much bigger than what we're taught in traditional churches. And that there was so much more out there than what religion puts in a little box. And so I never fit in anywhere in any churches. And I tried to go to different denominations. I tried to fit in. I had a relationship with God. I know God exists, but on a bigger scale, and it didn't fit in with those religions that I was trying out. That's when I found Unity. And it was actually Unity North, where I walked in and experienced, one of the services there. And after that, it became many services there, but that's actually where I felt home and where I felt closest to God for me. Something else that happened because of my ADC is that I don't feel that I have to go to a church or a building to experience God. I mean, I can have coffee on my back deck and experience God in the same way that I can when I'm in Unity. It's just that going to Unity for me gives me a sense of community and with like-minded people that believe the way that I believe.
So, Joni, since we've got you on the screen right now, I want to take advantage of this. You're kind of a behind-the-scenes person in the coming, and you're very humble. You've always been humble to say, it's all about Stephen, it's all about Stephen. But you have walked the journey of 7 years as well. Your relationship with God before and after, and in particular through the lens of your hospice care, with walking people to that veil and over the other side. But can you just speak a little bit about how that all ties together and how the movie, your hospice care, and your understanding of spiritual matters ties together?
It was because of my ADC that I decided to go into nursing. And even, at 14, obviously I'm too young for nursing school, so I did the next best thing. And right after my experience, it was earth-shattering in the most positive way. And I wanted to give people who may be scared of dying some hope. So I went at 14 years old and signed up to become a hospice volunteer. I didn't know how I was going to help anybody through their grief at 14 years old. All I knew is I had a story to share that I knew would relieve some fear in somebody that may be dying, and also some fear in somebody that may be anticipating a loved one's dying. I knew after my experience that life does not end after this physical life we live here. I know it doesn't end. I know it goes on. I know we go somewhere after this, and I know exactly where we go. But because of my ADC, that is why I became a nurse to begin with, and specifically why I became a hospice nurse. I've been a nurse for over 30 years. The majority of it was in a hospice and oncology unit. I did a little bit of ER locally here at Kennestone, but most of my care has been in hospice. And it's been because of my ADC. And then I've had subsequent ADCs after that.
Beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate, I always love the people who are behind the scenes, but I know that you've been instrumental in this movie making its way to us, so I thank you. I'm going to throw it back to Stephen, and to answer that question, he's had a chance to think about it, his religion, his experience of God before the movie, and has that changed his experience of life or spirituality of God, and through the movie, is that different now that the movie is complete? So, Stephen.
I'm going to answer that question as best I can without giving the impression that I'm ducking, because no one has ever asked me that question before. Talking about my relationship with God has always been personal to me, and it's not something I typically share, but I realize I'm in a safe room right now with you people, so I'm going to do the best I can. And here's my answer. I didn't think that God knew who I was before I made this movie. I felt like I had a relationship with him, but I didn't feel like he knew me. And I think during the course of this film, at some point pretty early on in the making of the film, I felt, again, like I was getting spirit help. So whether you call that God or whether you call that spirit or whether they're the same, I felt moved to tears on several occasions because I felt God was with me. And that was pretty awesome. So I would say that my relationship to God has been changed in a very profound way because, again, I think we're on a first-name basis now.
I love that, and I don't think that was ducking a question at all. In fact, it brought up something, and I have another question I'm going to have come up in just a moment, but one of Jackie's questions had to do with what happens after the fact. And I felt, as you were speaking and sharing with Jackie, this idea of there's no need for an intermediary, that these people developed a personal relationship. I didn't need to have the technique anymore, and that the movie itself established a sense of intimacy with all that is, with the spiritual reality that we cannot be separate. And I feel like the movie was a bit therapeutic for you in a spiritual manner to bring that sense of intimacy with God by whatever definition you give that entity and that energy. So I think that's a wonderful byproduct, and it's certainly what we teach in Unity. You don't need a priest between you and God. You don't need a technique between you and God. You are as close as the breath you just took.
Richard, I'm encouraged that you don't mind taking yourself out of the equation in that.
I'm trying to work myself out of a job, really, is what I'm doing. We have another question here.
Okay. Hey, Stephen. How are you?
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So just a couple of things. So one comment, one question. I'm actually a local therapist and have been using EMDR for years at this point and have been blown away by the healing that can happen with that technique. So I'm sorry. I am. I'm in Kennesaw. And the cool thing is that I have been pulled to doing this training since 2017. I read Dr. Botkin's book. And so when I got word that Unity was doing this, I was like, this is my push. So I'm organizing a group of other therapists to get this training. So if anybody here is a therapist and is interested, please come and see me after this. So the question for Stephen is, with the research, is the University of North Texas continuing the research they're doing, and where can we find that information?
Where could you find, I'm sorry, where could you find what?
The research that the University of North Texas did. I was just curious if we wanted to read more of their research. Is that in the resources? That's probably in your resources.
Study itself that they conducted?
Yes.
Okay, so that research has been finalized and put into a report that's been published. When I say published, it's in press, which means it will be published or available shortly, but right now it's not actually out. It's the journal, it's an academic journal called Grief Matters. It's out of Australia, but that's a peer-reviewed journal that Jan Holden, the director of the study, was very happy to be published in because it means her research is going to be taken seriously. It's, again, there are abstracts or citations to the research on my website. You go to the resources tab, and the very first couple of paragraphs are about where you could find the research. But right now, it's just an abstract. If you click on it, you're not going to be able to get past that. It's just a paragraph. But you'll be able to very shortly, maybe in the next few months, be able to read the full report.
Thank you. Thank you. We haven't seen any questions come up on my monitor here. Is there anybody online that has questions or comments that we can see? No? We're good?
I think Ellen had another question she forgot to ask me.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. So we'll keep that question up there, and then we'll let you finish.
I'm sorry, I failed at my homework. Okay, there was a technique mentioned in the film called bilateral stimulation. Is this the question?
I don't know. Is that your question?
Some of us in Wholeness Ministry. Okay, this is not my question. Okay, so the question was, with the documentary, were there reenactments, or were these real life experiences that you all were capturing with the family and with the other participants?
You know, Ellen, that's one of my favorite questions to field, because I get that question a lot. The reason why everything is real in the film, but there were instances where, because we're telling a story, we needed to go to a particular location, and we wanted people to have the conversation that they were waiting for to have until we were ready. So simply by virtue of the fact that we were trying to create a story, it's like a reality show. Reality shows, there's a certain amount of unreality. So all the conversations and all the emotions in the film are absolutely real. Everything is we captured is real, but just by virtue of the fact that we had to ask people to be to wait until the cameras were ready, just that makes things sometimes feel a little bit stagey. So I can understand why people could watch the film and wonder if these are reenactments. So I'm happy to report that there are no reenactments except for one. The one reenactment was when Karen's daughter is doing the research, and she discovers the after-death communication research at the University of North Texas. She's on her bed and she's on her iPad. Well, we were not there first time she stumbled upon that research, so we had to ask her just to go to her computer and do the same research again. So that was our one cheat. We did have to shoot that after it happened again. But since it's just B-roll, I don't feel like it's a terrible cheat. We needed it, and we got it, and it worked.
Well, I think
Thank you.
It is a tribute to your artistry as a filmmaker that we even have to ask the question, because it felt very genuine all the way throughout. And that's to your credit as the man behind the camera, but it's also a credit to this family that let you be that intimate with them. There's a question, and I'm really glad it came up, because we have a healing and wholeness ministry here, and one of the members of that ministry says the technique mentioned in the film, bilateral stimulation, that some of the people in that wholeness ministry chatted about that and saw a correlation to EFT, tapping, which is a technique of healing that many people in our community have used. And she was just pointing out that reminded her of that connection, and it was a nice place for her. Are there any more questions online, or any more questions? I got people tapping in the room as we speak. Come on up, Marilyn.
This film really clarified something for me. My husband died in 2001, and I went through a normal grief process, and it took about 5 years before I could talk about it without having some tears, and so I thought it was very normal. But a lot of my family thought that I went through it so easily, and I guess I kind of did. And this film made me realize that what happened at my husband's death helped me go through this. And what happened, I've written about it, so probably some of you have read it in the Unity book. So I'll just quickly say that they had to disconnect his life support equipment, and my daughter and I were holding hands out in the waiting room. We'd been in and said goodbye, and they'd sedated him. And it was our 34th wedding anniversary. And so I asked them to not do it until after midnight. So they disconnected the equipment at midnight, and at 2, I don't remember the exact time now, I thought I'd never forget, it was like around 2:32 in the morning, I suddenly just sat up. I felt this, it felt like a big bird going whoosh. And I said, he's gone. And to make a long story short, the nurses came out and told us the exact moment that I told her. That experience helped me to go through the grief process. And I never realized until I saw this film that I already did that work by having that experience and knowing for absolute 100% sure that he's here and I can access at any time that I want. And I subsequently was trained as a medium, and I never knew what to do with it. I never charged anybody, and I've had a lot of experience with it. But I realize now that the value in it is not in getting these little crazy messages about whatever somebody wants to know. It's in the knowing that the person is there. Their spirit and essence is there. And I feel that we don't need an intermediary, that we can access it at any time. And to answer one of the things that Richard said, in my family there have been some deaths, and there's been people that are just not handling it, and it's ripping the family apart. And I'm not close enough to the people, they're like in-laws and stuff, to be able to talk to them about this. But I can see where this technique would really help them. So thank you for the film.
Yes, for the
Thank
film.
you for that story. I loved it. Very good.
Well, and thank you for being open to coming into a religious institution. Quick question. How many churches have participated in showing the film like this one?
We just kind of started doing these private screenings, and Unity is our first church, but I think that we're going to be doing a lot more. I think Unity Memphis might be our next, but we're new to this. We're just unrolling now.
Well, we are new to it too, so we have a virgin experience happening, and we like to know that we're on the cutting edge of leading the way, anything we can do to help promote, and I'll ask that question at the end. I want to just give you the final few moments that we have, both you and Joni, an opportunity. What is the most important thing when in partnering with Unity North or any other church or with anybody who's interested? What is the most important thing for the human race to get as a result of your diligent and beautiful efforts?
Joan, you want to answer that?
Just to make sure I understand the question. What is the most important thing?
What do you, your desire that this movie, the impact, what is the most important impact you want to see this work bringing to the planet?
I want to see this kind of therapy become more mainstream, especially since I already had several spontaneous after-death communications myself. I know how healing they can be, but I also know that they don't happen spontaneously for everybody. I would like to see this therapy become more mainstream in grief therapy so that more people can experience that and heal from it.
Beautiful. And maybe that happened just even here tonight, now that we know we have a therapist in our backyard. Stephen, you want to answer that question?
Yes, for me, I'm a little bit, I would say when it comes to the actual modality to use, like I was saying before, I'm agnostic. Whatever modality that's selected by the bereaved that works for them is the one to use. And again, I really just want to make sure that people know that this kind of therapy is available and that it is the most healing, at least according to the therapists that I've been working with for the past 7 years. Something like induced after-death communication. I know Joni's recently became acquainted with something similar, that this therapy is extremely successful, it's extremely healing, and my goal, and I think you said it earlier to me on the phone, Richard, that if the people who need to see this film see it, that's a triumph.
Yeah, we did talk on the phone, and just full disclosure, both Stephen and I had a kind of a disappointing reaction when we put this out there, thinking there would be throngs of people that would jump on board a free opportunity to have something so valuable. And the numbers did not play out. And so that kind of brings me to my final question for you, Stephen, is what can we do as a community, Unity North, and what can we do as individuals to help your work get to mainstream, to get in front of more people, to get to PBS, to get where it needs to get? What can we do to support the work?
Well, I really appreciate that, Richard. I would say, talk if you like the film and it's aligned with your own message, talk about it with your friends, talk about it on social media, talk about it with your family, your extended family, and get people to visit the website. And if they haven't seen the film, they could sign up for on a waiting list where they will get to see the film. And of course, we always accept donations. There's always a button on the website that says donate, and you can donate anytime you want. But of course, I don't want to, spend the last few minutes just, shelling for money.
Let me do
I don't want
that.
to do that.
It is important. I know the kind of resources and finances that it takes to get into even just the message of our church, to get it out there into the world. Well, this is going to make it to the world, and I will encourage you, not on Stephen's behalf, but on behalf of the message that needs to be heard, to, if this had meaning to you tonight and you have experienced, as I have, the sincerity, the genuine spirit and heart and love behind this project with these two people, to make a donation. And I will be making a donation because it does get me the more information I wanted. There's a lot more information you can get by making a simple, small donation to get those backstories, to get some of that B-roll that wasn't in the movie. So I hope that those of you online will do that, on Facebook and YouTube. Those of you in the room will do that. I hope that you have felt the beautiful heart of Stephen Berkeley and the sincere care of Joni Gomo, and I hope you felt it in the film before you even met them. And I want to just give thanks in our final moments to the tech team. This is a virgin experience. We're figuring out how to do all 5 of these modalities at one time. And the guys in the booth, Sebastian and Wes, Nicole and Julie, were over here. When we had a plan B that didn't work, we went to plan C, and I think we ended up at plan D. And I'm proud of my team, and I'm grateful for my team. And any last comments that you want to make, Stephen, before we close the evening?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your congregation. It was fun doing this Q&A, and thank you so much for the opportunity to join you tonight. And Joni?
Thank you so much. We look forward to this all week long. So thank you for having us. I need to get back in there more in person.
Yeah, we're keeping attendance. We haven't seen you for a while. No, I'm kidding. So we leave this time and we leave this space with a deep awareness that the universe is not bound by boundaries or borders, man-made constructs and ideas, not even by science of old, but by our willingness to reach beyond the veils, to reach beyond the borders, and to experience the vast miracle that is God expressed as the one energy, the one life, and the one light that we have felt here tonight, that we saw in the movie, and that we will feel as we continue to open up our own minds and hearts to connect with those loved ones that are just standing at a door knocking, waiting for us to open the door. Thank you, God, for this time. Thank you, God, for Stephen and Joni. And thank you, God, for the people gathered here and online. Go in peace. Thanks so much for joining us. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.